Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to our first ever bonus episode of the Lucas and Zack podcast. We just finished up an entire month on Tom Hanks, and well, we did almost every decade of Tom Hanks, but we didn't talk about the 2020s because Tom Hanks does have one movie in them. With me today is Zack, my usual co-host. How you doing, Zack?
I'm doing good. That's all I got
And
today.
he's a man of few words. And of course, our special guest on this wonderful bonus episode is Mr. Mike Hanley. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing fan-fucking-tastic.
That is the exact answer we expected from Mike. Today we're going to be talking about Greyhound, which is in theory sounds like a Tom Hanks movie. In execution, and not so much, maybe. But let's hold that for a second. We're going to get into our typical opener, which is we're going to talk about the last film we logged on Letterboxd. Zack, why don't you tell us what's the last movie you logged on Letterboxd?
So I traveled across the country to attend the New York Film Festival, all within 12 hours. I got there and back, and I saw Nomadland. The New York Film Festival is doing it virtual this year, opens up the possibilities for those who don't live in New York to go, which is great. I did cook a special dinner, the dinner from Moonlight. I'm obsessed with cooking the dinner they make in Moonlight. I made that for me and my mom and my sister. I dressed up. I wore a tie, some nice like maroon corduroys. I did not wear socks because it's my own damn house. There was a tie. My mom and my wife are hooligans, heathens even, who did not dress up and just ate my dinner and watched the movie on my bill. I get it. I'm the only one that puts effort into anything. But anyways, Nomadland is really great. It's nice to have like the feel like I'm having big screen experiences, even though it was at home. Just the um, exclusiveness, which makes me sound like a dick that I have exclusive rights over other people. But the exclusiveness of it made it seem like you're, getting to see new movies and you're, paying for it adds to that too. And so that was exciting. I'm glad I can actually give my money towards a new release and a interesting director like Chloe Zhao. This movie will probably be talked about if there is an Oscar season, especially with Frances McDormand. And also, I really miss that this movie almost came out in the same month as The Eternals, both directed by Chloe Zhao, and they have you'd be so confused why one she wanted to do The Eternals or why anyone thought her other movies showed that she was going to be a good fit because it's very different and low key. There is a superhero god that comes through in the middle of it and saves Frances McDormand from her nomad life, and they fall in love forever. But spoilers, sorry.
Well, I think I'm jealous that you got to see this. I was sort of hoping you told us you traveled by map when you figured out that was how you got to New York Film Festival.
That's your brand.
That's the Zack brand right there. Mike, what's the last movie you logged on Letterboxd?
The last movie I watched was an 80s horror movie, Blood Diner, about two cannibalistic brothers that kill women and use their flesh to make meals out of.
If I know anything about Mike Hanley, this is a great fucking movie.
You would think, but it was a pretty good fucking movie. It was too much on the corny side for me, but still a fun fucking time.
All right. Well, the spinoff of The Cook from Texas Chainsaw clearly is going well there. You get to open a diner. The last movie I logged was so bad. It's called The Jesus Rolls. It's the movie John Turturro made where he took his character from The Big Lebowski. This movie is complete bullshit. Like, the fact that he calls it his character is insulting to the original character. He's not even as good as he was in The Big Lebowski. He gets a bunch of really talented people to be in a movie with him. None of them get anything to do. He wrote this movie and stars in it, but he never figured out what he wanted the plot or even the point of this movie to be. The only good thing I can say about it is it's quick. You get through it really fast, but it is just utterly disappointing and frustrating because it's like, you didn't need to take your character from a movie people love and then put it in this thing and then give no effort. So, yeah, don't do that. Don't do that, John Turturro. And with that, let's move on to our feature film, Greyhound. And we have a lovely tradition on the show where my co-host Zack sucks at movie summaries. And this movie is going to be interesting because There's not necessarily a lot to say, but I'm going to see how long Zach can go with it. Zach, give us the plot summary for Greyhound.
All right, so first of all, normally I've been pretty good at this relative to my normal ability, but I watched this a week ago, which should be like yesterday for most people, but for me, that might as well be 5 years ago. When we do the podcast, I've seen them a lot sooner. And two, like, yeah, I had no idea what was happening this whole movie. So here we go. Tom Hanks was hanging out with now I'm freezing on people's names.
Elizabeth Shue.
Thank you, Elizabeth Shue. With Elizabeth Shue at a hotel place. They may have been lovers. No one knows. They're trying to say that he has connections with someone. And they talk about meeting somewhere and act like there's this whole like he talked about all his training he has to do and go from this place to go to this place. That all happens in outer space because time moves forward and all of a sudden he's in war already. We don't know at all what led up to him being right, amongst a battle about to happen. Shit happens. He says a lot of nonsense into a walkie-talkie. The people respond nonsense to him. They sing. There's a wolf in the water that comes and shoots bombs. And that's the best character. And he sounds like Werner Herzog. And that's all that matters. And I think they live at the end. Right, I think they win. They get back in time because he meets up with Elizabeth Shue, and maybe they have babies, but they're both kind of old. But I feel like they were hinting at that. I think they were supposed to be 40 years old and not 60/50s.
Yeah, okay, that is essentially the plot of this movie. Let's start the discussion here, which is I think you made a good point, which is that this is one of my biggest sticklers of this movie, and this relates back to the Elizabeth Shue characters. This movie doesn't really set up the main part of the story. So the main part of the story is he is on a destroyer with like cargo vessels trying to cross the ocean to bring supplies, and the U-boats are trying to blow them up. And that should be that's the main meat of the story. But I think that one of the frustrating things with the movie is they never set this up. They don't really tell us like what's going on. Why is it important that Tom Hanks succeeds in this mission? They never give us, like, we know he needs to get these ships from point A to point B without being blown up, but they don't really tell us why. Like,
there's really no context at all.
There's no context for this, and there's also really no context to the people on the ship. Like, this movie would be a lot better, I think, if they gave us scenes where we learned why people followed Tom Hanks, why people cared about him as a person, why his crew worked with him. And just like more generally, I think this movie could do with some more setup.
I think with it is that they wanted to jump right into just let's fucking go, which I think without having, I agree with, if they didn't have the Elizabeth Shue scene at the beginning of what he, like the setup of that, if they didn't have that and they jumped right into it, I think it would have worked better because then you just into the meat of it and you just going, this is a fucking story we're telling. Let's fucking go with it. On my second rewatch, it did kind of hurt that fact because I started looking at it from that perspective of going, without that beginning scene, I think it would have, what's the fucking word? Not tonal wise, but it would have kept moving. It would have kept moving quicker with that beginning part, even though it does set his character up a little bit. I don't think that's needed because with the dialogue with him on that ship, I think that sets it up what we need to know about him as a character.
Yeah, if you want to go straight in with an action movie and have that, first and foremost, and story doesn't matter, great. I support that movie. Probably still don't like that movie, but I support the idea of that movie. But don't pretend that you have a real plot and a real character by adding the 8 minutes and 5 minutes on both sides. And that's it. That's all you ever talk about. It's just like it's pretend plotting. If you want to go for action, go for it. Don't have your cake and eat it too by also trying to pretend there's a story and a romance. Maybe romance. No one knows.
That is a weird thing. It really isn't clear. Is she his sister? Like, if you could come up to me and tell me that's his daughter, that's his sister, that's his wife, that's his girlfriend. You could tell me any of those pairings. You could tell me any of those pairings, and I would believe you, because the movie is never clear about it. I also do think that first scene, and I agree with you in this, Mike. That first scene makes me think that the next scene after it is going to be Tom Hanks training in the Caribbean.
Yes.
Not jumping straight. Well, I know. I agree. But I think you either need to pick a side. You need to either opening shot is panning over the water up to the destroyer, or scene with Elizabeth Shue, scene training, then scene on the ocean.
Yeah.
I feel like you need to pick a side, and you can't do what they did, which is just sort of give you a little bit of a human story, but then jump straight into it. It's inconsistent.
It's real outdated plot setup that, or like every movie needs a love interest, no matter what. That
It
women
is.
are going to see the movie unless you have a romance. So they put on 3 minutes of possible romance. With Tom Hanks, there should not be romantic lead anymore. It's okay to just play grandpas and heroes. You don't need to have like I don't need to think about you having sex with Elizabeth Shue. That's all I thought about for 4 minutes.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Zach. So one thing I think would actually make this movie better is a second perspective or a third perspective when we're in the battle sequence. Because I actually really like the action sequences. I think those work. But I think it would be really cool is if we saw the crew on one of the ships communicating with Tom Hanks. So you got to see both sides. Or if you got to see the crew on one of the submarines and just kind of give it a little bit. Give it a little. Just give it a little more depth. Give it a little bit more fleshed out, so it's not just one ship and everything else is just kind of like pieces of metal that are going around it. I just think it helps to flesh the movie out and give you some more understanding of even the space of that's around the Greyhound. Because I think one thing I would have trouble with is they have to literally write on screen telling you what the other ships are. Otherwise, you don't know what they are because they never set any of them up. And I think I wish they'd done better.
Speaks, sir. Grey Wolf speaks.
Now, he adapted this from a book called The Good Shepherd, which I've not read the book, so I don't know exactly how much he adapted from it. But he may, from my looking at it from the story perspective, he may have constrained himself to just putting it with his ship and just having that unknown factor, which I think does work. For the story. It is definitely overlong. It should be shorter. The actual movie. I think that it was a little bit longer than it had to be. I think if he would have just cut a little bit here and there, I think he would have tightened it up. And I think the action scenes would have worked a lot better in that regard, especially sticking with them, because then the unknown factor comes in. You don't know what the fuck the other U-boats, you don't know what they're thinking when it comes to him. Like, I agree that having another perspective could help that regard, but I think keeping it on him and his ship was a right move if they would have tightened it up better.
I don't know how much more they can tighten this movie up. This movie is 90 minutes. It's a 90-minute long war movie. Like, if you make this any shorter, you're competing in the short film category.
It still seemed like 3 hours.
It really does feel long for a movie that's 90 minutes, though. I would agree. It feels like I think part of it is that maybe you could have done better even if you just focused on the one ship and given you more perspectives of the other crew members. I feel like you're so focused on Hanks on the bridge all the time, and it's like, that's not the interesting part. I want to see the guy in the sonar room, or I want to see the people like dealing with the engines and dealing with like, there's interference.
I feel like they think they gave more focus to the other characters, just like they thought they gave it a plot. Because then, like, one of my biggest problems is you have one of the best, character actors I feel like we have working today with Rob Morgan on the ship. He's had great roles in Just Mercy and Mudbound. It was terrific in both of those. And I would say like should have been Oscar nominated, but my opinion only matters so much. I'm only one of the voters for the Academy, but. Also, they have him in there. He's doing his damnedest as he does, but he just kind of gives a couple of looks to Tom Hanks and maybe cares a lot about him having food, but don't actually give him a character to play. It's just someone like reacting to Hanks just to kill him off later, and we're supposed to be emotionally attached to that character. And also, like, I think that was them having some like political say of like the black staff in the kitchen getting people it was less of a deal when they die or are seemed like they weren't having as important as roles as everybody else, so it was giving them more focus on screen, but didn't actually care about the story. They didn't really say anything. They didn't use those characters to any real depth. And that's a waste of Rob Morgan. And so I sent him $1 million. He should have got paid more for every role he does to make up for it.
See, I can agree with that because the first time I watched it, I was focused on Tom Hanks. throughout the entire movie, as you would be. So I enjoyed it from that perspective. But second time around, I started looking at the supporting actors, and I think it suffered from what I believe Dunkirk also suffered from, which is supporting cast kind of washing itself away.
I disagree with that completely because I think Dunkirk gave enough, focus and time and had
Emotional.
like one
Dunkirk had no emotion. You didn't give a shit about.
Wait, I feel like I did because I care about people. And I don't hate everyone like you do.
Are we
like if I don't know their favorite breed of dog, then I don't care about them.
Are we allowed to kick Mike off the podcast? Because he's besmirching Dunkirk, and I love Dunkirk.
Yeah, this is unnecessary. Is this payback for the terminal?
Oh, yes. Rob Morgan wasted. Also, Stephen Graham wasted. He's really good in The Irishman, and this movie does nothing with him.
Stephen Graham should be in every mobster movie, and that's what they get wrong about. They're like, let's take this mobster and put him on a boat. No, he's about to have some crooked card games in the back and go be shoot anybody that tells on them. That's not someone you want on a boat. No mobsters on the boat is miscasting.
Yeah. Another thing I think it's interesting is I wonder if Mike noticed this either the first time or the second time is the water looks really weird.
Yes, I noticed that on the end of the second we watched. I started noticing during the battle sequences, especially.
It looks really CGI'd,
yeah,
and it looks really metallic, and it's too shiny. And the same thing also happens for any wide shot or overhead shot when you see the other ships. They also look super fake. Like the one ship that looks okay is the Greyhound that Hanks is on because you get to see more of it.
Yeah.
But any of the ships you just see in the distance, outside of the subs, I think the subs look okay. The other ships just look really bad. It's a weird movie.
First of all, fake water, completely agree. My Letterboxd review is just as simple. I didn't want to give away our podcast. I know everyone listens to. So all I said was, I really miss real water, or I forget what real water looks like, because nothing does water well anymore. Aquaman fucking looks miserable the whole time. Even when they're on land and you look at the water, it looks like shit. It does not look like water. It looks like plastic. And then if swimming in plastic, that's a more impressive superhero power. So maybe that's true. I wish I could swim in plastic. I feel like Pixar movies just started to get water right, and it took a long time, and there I have it. That's like, you can use real water. You can use an ocean. There's no reason you can't act like this boat is an ocean. Get some real boats. Master and Commander used real boats. I never saw it, but let's say they use real boats, and you should too.
It reminded me a lot of the wide shots of Troy. If you've ever seen the wide shots of the ships coming in.
Yeah.
A lot, like some of them look good. Other than the back, holy shit.
Troy does that thing, and I think this does the same thing where they're trying to make everything look so big. They want so many ships around them, everything, and that's when it starts to break down the most.
Yeah, and I think it's just I feel like they're trying to have a really pristine visual look, which it is. Everything is just like shines because everything is gray and silver. But that takes away like any grounded quality. This seems like it takes place in Zack Snyderverse, so I don't even think it was real World War II. I think it takes place outside of Gotham, and because it just is covered in that gray, which is like hiding any, I feel like, real visual eye or technique that they could have had if they used real water.
There's also just some weird shots. There's that one shot where they pan up and go through the clouds and look at like stars, and it's just like, I don't know why they put it. Makes no sense. And it's not even used as like a way to, pass time or like show the time has passed. It's just this random shot where they go up and do this. Yeah, this movie is it's funny because I think when I first heard about it was like 2 years ago, and I think I was like, oh, it's Tom Hanks, captain of a boat. So I'm like, okay, this is like a kind of a mix between Captain Phillips and Captain John Miller from Saving Private Ryan. And it's neither.
And it's a passion project. You should care about it more.
I know. It's so weird because like Tom Hanks wrote the screenplay for this movie.
He really cared about this movie. I don't know what he
really wanted to do this. And we've been talking about so much of this entire run. It's been talking about what are Tom Hanks' roles? What does he do in a role? And this is the premise is Tom Hanks. And the character is not at all.
Yeah, no, he is more subdued, which works in some capacity, but I think it it misses the punch of like Captain Phillips, to where
Yeah.
you feel emotionally attached to him throughout the entire movie. You want to follow him, you care about him. This one, even though I enjoy the performance he gives, his character is not one that you go, I definitely want to see him make it out of this.
Right. He's not the Tom Hanks hero who's like,
Yeah.
I always know what I'm doing. We're always going to do the right thing. We're going to work our hardest to make sure everybody gets to safety. Blah, that's the Tom Hanks character.
I think
And this guy is like,
to be that.
but this guy doesn't strike me as particularly good at his job.
Well, because they don't talk to each other in real human language, and they only talk
That's
to each
true.
other in code, so
That's
you
true.
can't see his true leadership come out. But I think he's supposed still the hero that saves the day, and I think we're supposed to, want to root for him because he's Tom Hanks. They're just carrying on. You know who Tom Hanks is, right?
Yeah.
You got the
Oh, yeah,
picture.
100%.
Imagine him on a boat, and they don't try anything else to build the character past Tom Hanks. It's the most liquefied version of what we came to know about a Tom Hanks archetype. They just took it to its simplest pieces and said, "Here's your character."
You're right. You just made a really good point, which is that the movie only talks in jargon. The movie is only battle jargon. It's always move the ship this way, fire this, talk to the other ship. That's all he does. He has almost no human conversations throughout the entire film. And that makes it so hard to care. Why do we like Saving Private Ryan and John Miller so much? It's not because of what he's saying in the scenes where they're fighting to take something. It's the scene where he stops them from fighting and he's like, all right, fine, I'll release the pool. It's those scenes. It's the human moments that make you like him. It's not the combat jargon of the leadership in those moments. It's the humanity. And this movie really lacks in that. It's almost like it feels robotic at times. Like they're all just like, you could theoretically do this with computers. I'm a computer. I can make a calculation and tell another part of the computer to move or to fire or to look over there. And it just lacks the humanity you expect out of a Tom Hanks film. And I think in some ways that's why it comes up so short for me. It's just you expect a Tom Hanks movie to have like a sense of humanity at its heart and just be about a hero. And then the hero acts in the way where his humanity defines his every move.
I think it was it feels at least like it's his, like the passion that he has clearly for military and like the wars kind of overstepped him writing to where he knew all the terms himself. So he goes, because that's what matches with it. Even though regular fucking Joes aren't going to know what the fuck happened in life. He goes, I'm still going to have it because this is fucking cool. And this is realistic. I think it's a more realistic approach that he took to it, which did hurt it when it comes to dialogue wise, because half of it you're going, yeah, this is cool. You kind of get it visually what they're doing, but at the same time you don't know what the fuck they're talking about. It's like you're watching a foreign movie without the subtitles.
Yeah. It's super isolating. It didn't affect the character growth for me as much as just like the understanding of the story. I never knew what was happening until like, oh, they shot a ship.
Yeah.
Oh, they shot the ship back. And that was the only conversation I can have with myself. Ooh, look, they're shooting guns. They're shooting guns. I think someone died. And that's all I got. Because they're just going like UB4 8-2 to the KK. Oh, that was 1K. Close. To the MP4.
Yeah.
MP4. I'm just saying.
Yeah, just that,
and the letters that already
basically this movie thinks that you watch a war movie because you want to hear the nerd stuff and not because you want to hear the patriotism and like human spirit and teamwork. Because let's be real, nobody watches war movies because they're like, I want to really make sure that they're like using the right coordinates to shoot a missile launcher off. They're like, no, you're watching a war movie because you care about them working as a team. And this movie just really doesn't get that. It's maybe like Tom Hanks got a little too nerdy when he was writing this. And he was like, I love, targeting code or something, and just go way into that.
I think it assumes that there's a bigger crowd of war and boat nerds that know all the types. And like, don't worry, the fans, they're going to show up. The boat fans, they're going to be here. And don't realize that's 10 people. And so I'm glad they understood the movie. People that really understand, are watching nonstop World War II YouTube videos and probably have a social disorder. I'm glad you understood the movie.
Let's talk about Zach's favorite part.
Grey Wolf, because you know who doesn't speak in code?
And I just looked this up. Zach, do you want to know who voices Grey Wolf? It is not, but it is a famous British actor, a famous German actor. It's Thomas Kretschmann. who you've seen in stuff such as he's been in Westworld. He was in Downfall.
Who did he play in Westworld?
He plays.
This is fun.
He plays Gerald in Westworld. He's also, more importantly, I think our audience will probably most likely to know him as Baron von Strucker from Winter Soldier and Age of Ultron. Yeah. That is the guy who does the voice for Grey Wolf.
Okay, and I know I've been making Werner Herzog jokes, and I know he sounds something like Werner Herzog. His pitch is a lot higher and more sinister, and not as like this might be what God sounds like Werner Herzog sounds like. But he's still German and is like really entertaining just to hear this like weird ass voice. Sorry, Germans, I called your voice weird ass. I sound like I'm a high surfer myself, speaking with a lisp. I completely lost track of where I even started that conversation. Grey Wolf comes on the mic. He doesn't speak in code. He's just like, I will destroy you. There is no way out, Tom Hanks. Voice. I think I wrote a line. I don't remember, but it was a lot of like cool Grey Wolf threats, and they're just like, I feel like they were a lot cooler on that sub. They're probably partying. They all seemed about happy and more into it. I think it would have been a much more fun ship.
Well, they just feel like they feel human. Like,
that's why I like them better.
Of course, they're taunting him because, like, of course they're like, yeah, we're gonna come and destroy you. Like, they're the only characters in the movie who don't talk in code.
Don't make me
the most enjoyable part.
Like, think the Nazi is the most entertaining character. They're German, right?
Yes, they are German.
But I think that's what makes it.
I don't want to say they're nice guys. They're Nazis. They're not nice guys, but they're probably having fun in their ship. They have a better name and a better speaking voice.
With them just doing the voices, I think that's what makes it more entertaining. Because if you saw them and it cut to them just saying these lines for just fucking standing there,
it would be a whole different
way the comedy aspect of it, which is I love everything with his voice is incredible in that.
The ship looks cool, and it comes up in a sinister way.
Oh yeah, those are the cool. That's actually the coolest looking design is any of the U-boats. They have the cool designs drawn on them, and like some of them have wolves, have like demons and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Do you think that every boat in the water had to like take dibs of what gray animal they want? And so like someone got down to like the gray porcupine or the gray sand cat because they're running out of options. I just want to know how many gray animals are in the water.
They only gave two. Up and shot each other and took it themselves.
Yeah.
We'll get to episode 3 and it'll be like, the gray baby seal, and that'll be the name of the sequel.
All right, gentlemen. Does anyone have any more final thoughts on this film? I want to give Mike a floor for a second because I know you like this movie more than we did, and I want you to talk about like why, like what connected you with this film in the way that that just didn't for us.
For me, it was just the fact that it stuck with his one ship and it stuck on his journey of being in control of the ship for the first time and having to deliver the products to them while these U-boats are surrounding him at all times. He was very subdued, but I think it worked for this role for the most part. Like the second time around, a lot of the stuff like the Elizabeth Shue part, I don't think was needed in there to explain what was going on. I think getting into the actual battle of it and the journey of it would have been the better approach. But overall, I still think it's a pretty good fucking movie. You get Tom Hanks as a captain. He's fucking captain now. It's always a great fucking time with him. The German side of it, just hearing the voices was always fucking entertaining. I loved it, just like Zach. That was some of my favorite parts of it.
Grey Wolf should be in every movie. Say shit, get out.
And the only other part, though, that I think would have been better is the ending of them, how they do the little celebration that they have of it. I think the celebration part did not live up to what he went through. I think they should have done at least an extra scene at the end to give it that one last hurrah of what everything they went through, because everything that he's going through, you're supposed to feel bad that he went through all this and he was able to succeed finally. Like, you're supposed to feel emotions. And I think towards the end, you kind of just go, awesome, he survived, but am I really that happy about it?
Mhm.
Maybe. It's cool. Tom Hanks isn't dead. That's always a good sign. But yeah, overall, I still think it's a good watch. Would I buy it? No. But it was a good movie to rent. I enjoyed it for the 2-time watches that I did. Definitely did go down, but still pretty good.
Biggest Greyhound fan. 2 watches. Biggest fan of Greyhound.
It gets kind of already.
Tom Hanks, send this man some merch, some autograph merch. He's clearly your biggest fan.
Send him the original screenplay. Send him models of the boats.
Yeah. I have to say, I think this movie was a little disappointing for me. We've talked mostly about it. I just think they could have done more. Action scenes are still pretty good, but it kind of doesn't live up to what you expect from Tom Hanks in a boat movie. It would have been interesting to see this movie if he didn't write it. Maybe if they let a more accomplished screenwriter take this on.
A book just showed up on my desk. I realized it was here, a copy of the Greyhound book called Book That Made Greyhound. And I'm reading, I just want to read a little bit of the story here so you can compare and contrast. And it goes, there's a ship. It goes boom, boom. There's another ship. It also goes boom, boom. They both boom, boom at the same time. Ships get hurt. People get hurt. Chapter 8. Okay.
I think the important part of that statement that Jack said is ships go boom, boom, together. Which is,
movie.
I think we're going to move on.
Going boom, boom.
I think we should move on from ships going boom, boom together because we're going to get banned by somebody. Let's move on to the 2020s discussion of Hanks. So, of course, the previous times we've done this, we've talked about the films that were released. And for us right now, only Greyhound has been released in the 2020s for Hanks. But I did go to IMDb, and we're going to take a quick discussion of the films he has either post-production, pre-production, or announced, and just talk about what we think that could potentially end up being and how excited we are for them. So, of course, the first movie up is currently in post-production. It's called News of the World. It's a Paul Greengrass film where he plays, and I'm just going to read the plot synopsis off IMDb. He plays a Texan traveling across the Wild West, bringing the news of the world to local townspeople, agrees to help rescue a young girl who is kidnapped, and looks like he's basically the only actor of note in this film.
So this is like Paul Greengrass doing The Searchers, more or less?
It does, yeah, sort of does sound like The Searchers, True Grit, something like that.
Yeah, True Grit, The Missing also gave me vibes.
Yeah.
With Tommy Lee Jones. It gave me vibes of that.
It's going to be these movies, but with hand cam. He's redoing The Searchers with hand cam.
Yeah. It's certainly an interesting movie for Hanks. You don't really think Western with Tom Hanks. He doesn't necessarily have the face for it.
I think it's going to be we're all going to watch it.
I mean, we're all going to watch it because it's the Paul Greengrass Tom Hanks film. But
he needs to get that Kurt Russell mustache going, and then he's fucking right there.
There's some pictures on there. I'm sorry to tell you, he looks like he has a pretty weak, just basic beard.
They announced the rest of the cast as possible for Kurt Russell. Didn't.
It looks like it's in post production, and the entire cast looks to be there. Okay. We may be unlucky on that one.
He'll make a cameo.
So let's play a little game. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's the excitement for each of you guys for News of the World? Mike, why don't you go first?
Okay, so I would say out of 10, I'd say give it a, so far with that, because I haven't looked into it, 6.
Okay. Zach?
I'll give it a 7 because it's Paul Greengrass doing Tom Hanks. It could go up with the trailer.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm kind of in the 6 boat with Mike. I like the combination of a lead and a director, but the subject matter is a little interesting. And then next up is another post-production film. It's called BIOS. It's a Miguel Sapochnik film with, looks like, Tom Hanks and Caleb Landry Jones. And the plot synopsis is: on a post-apocalyptic Earth, a robot built to protect the life of his creator's beloved dog learns about life, love, friendship, and what it means to be human.
Wait, is Tom Hanks the dog?
I'm trying to figure that out. There's not a lot
I think he's a robot. I think he's supposed to be the robot that's taking care of the dog.
That's fine. They don't really want Tom Hanks in space, but if he's the robot, just being like a voice, I don't need him to be a sci-fi hero.
This is an interesting. That's an interesting. I mean, he's working with good directors so far, but
This guy did a lot of TV as I'm looking at it. Like
He's
Game
a
of
very
Thrones.
famous. He's a very famous
House.
Game of Thrones. This guy directed
Okay.
some of the
I
best
never heard of
episodes of Game of Thrones. So
How do you know
it's always
who
a pleasure.
directed Game of Thrones episodes?
Because Sapochnik is really famous. He did the best. He did the good stuff. Let's go. Let's play the excitement game again. Zach, you got a score out of 10?
I'm gonna go with the 5, which is really what I'll give any movie that is not like a franchise number 12. I'll probably get a 5 until I see more.
All right, and Mike?
See, I'm gonna give it a 5 as well, but it's because I'm really hoping that the trailer's gonna show us that plot is just the first half, and the second half shit's gonna go nuts.
All right, all right. Yeah, I think I'm in the 5 boat too. It would be nice to. It's one of those ones. It's so hard to judge a movie that's that like esoteric off just a plot synopsis and a couple of characters. Like, there's not a lot there you can start digging into. So
there's a lot you can get to because it tells you that Caleb Landry Jones is, so you know he's about to do some creepy shit. Oh, he's the robot, by the way. Caleb Landry Jones is the robot. Tom Hanks
is the robot.
Wikipedia is an alien inventor and one of the last men on Earth. So he is a space hero. I don't need Tom Hanks as a space hero. He's old.
All right. So next up is in pre-production, the live-action adaptation of Pinocchio, directed by Robert Zemeckis, and it looks like Tom Hanks is rumored, it's not an official, to be playing Geppetto. I don't know about you guys. I'll go first here. I am been very iffy on Disney live-action remakes. Like, there's like less than half of them are good. I don't even really know if I want to see a live-action remake of Pinocchio. But like, if Zemeckis and Hanks is the best part of that pitch, so I guess a 3 or 4 out of 10.
The best part of the pitch. How long are you going to think Robert Zemeckis is a quality director at all? It doesn't just put whatever weird idea he has on screen to whatever failure in his use of technology, which is distracting. I feel like I'm going to hate the way this looks. I don't like in most of his modern visuals, and this Pinocchio can look rough. Tom Hanks as Geppetto, great. I'm all for it. That sounds like perfect Disney casting. And I love Pinocchio the story. So I would have been higher, but that's weird. I want to give Mike a chance to speak about this, but I also need him to know that you left out the most important information about bios. Is that what it's called?
Okay, what did I forget?
Biomes?
Bios, yeah. What did I forget?
It's co-starring Skeet Ulrich.
Billy dude.
Oh, yeah.
My bad.
But yeah, okay. So Robert Zemeckis, I love Robert Zemeckis. His later stuff, 50-50 with me. But his 80s, 90s, I'm fucking there. So now, is this officially a Disney remake, or is it just
it is the Disney one.
Fuck, I was looking for a goddamn horror movie. Horror movie with Tom Hanks, Robert Zemeckis directed. I'm fucking there for a Pinocchio horror version. But yeah, I'll give it until I see a trailer, because Tom Hanks as Geppetto, I'm liking that. If that's real, I'm liking that cast.
Yeah, it is kind of the unfortunate part, is that even if Robert Zemeckis wanted to do something interesting, that Disney machine is going to be like, nope, we got to do the exact remake of the original.
If Robert Zemeckis is able to use a real wooden puppet and somehow turn it into a real donkey, turn a real wooden puppet into a real donkey, then I'm all in.
What if Tom Hanks Polar Expresses this and just plays the puppet and the donkey using mocap?
The donkey. What if Tom Hanks only plays the donkey version of Pinocchio and they get a kid for Pinocchio?
That's an interesting idea.
He gets to play the donkey Pinocchio and Maestro the whale. That's his 2 roles.
All right. Next up is another pre-production. It's called In the Garden of Beasts, and it's about...
And it has the word beasts in it.
It doesn't have the word beasts.
It's a garden of them. So that one beast. All the beasts are blooming, baby, in this garden.
It's a Joe Wright film where I assume Tom Hanks is playing the college professor that becomes America's first ambassador to Hitler's Germany. And occurs just before the Nazis begin their takeover of Europe.
You said a lot of real exciting things, and then it's another World War II Nazi Germany story. But you did say Joe Wright, the great director of Pants. I have endless confidence in his abilities.
This does really feel like my favorite of the entire group so far. It's just feels like to fall in the perfect Lucas gap of probably not very interesting drama that I will be an entire star higher than anyone else.
It's a dad movie. I know,
I think-
dad movies more than you.
All right, me and Zach are in this movie. What about you, Mike?
Okay, so refresh me on this. So Tom Hanks is playing a Nazi teacher?
No, he's playing a professor that becomes the America's ambassador to Nazi Germany.
Oh,
yeah.
fuck. If it was not, I would be fucking 10 out of 10. I'll fucking say it right away. Well, Tom Hanks was a goddamn Nazi. I'll do a 7.
Tom
It
Hanks is a
still
Nazi.
looks enjoyable.
That
I'll
would
do a 7 until I
never-
see the trailer. I like it.
I don't think the Tom Hanks machine is allowed to play Nazis. I think he has to always play the good guy, so that's definitely not a possibility.
Hey, Mike was also vague with it. He didn't say he was a Nazi. He was a Nazi teacher, so he just taught Nazis. He could have been like the innocent math teacher that was getting his world around him changed drastically.
All right, next up is a remake, an American remake of A Man Called O.
Oh,
Did you guys see this movie?
no, but I
No.
thought about seeing that movie.
I think my parents saw it and they liked it a lot. I also just I'm gonna be honest, I am out on let's remake a foreign film 3 years later or 4 years later in this case.
Yeah.
I'm just out on that as a concept. It's like there's so many more interesting things you can do. Tom Hanks, come on. You could make anything you want, and you're really gonna try to make a remake of a foreign movie. It's like when wasn't Jack Nicholson gonna do the remake of Tony Erdmann, I think. And I was like, please don't do that. Please
It's
don't do that.
Instead, let's encourage people to watch foreign language films rather than trying to make it
Yeah.
more accessible for people. Let's just speak out instead. Why don't you just say, I was thinking of remaking this great movie, but we can't for whatever reasons. And then people were like, hey, they were going to make this, and you give more attention. So just fake producing these movies and don't actually produce these movies. Hire me for Hollywood. I have good ideas.
What do you think, Mike, about
I'm
remakes?
going 5.
5? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going 7, and it could be higher. I don't know because I know just what the story's about at least, and it sounds like something that he can do great. I still want to see it, and then I can pretend I saw American Called Ove and seem more intelligent after I see the remake.
Nice. The next up is the final one he has listed on IMDb. This is it's an untitled Elvis Presley project directed by Baz Luhrmann, where somebody named Austin Butler will be playing Elvis Presley. The cast also includes David Wenham, Luke Bracey, Dacre Montgomery, and looks like Tom Hanks is playing Colonel Tom Parker.
Yeah, I looked this up too. I had no idea who the fuck Colonel Tom Parker.
Yeah.
And what the hell that has to do with Elvis?
I'm assuming his role's probably really small.
Yeah.
He was the manager of
Okay.
Elvis Presley.
His name was Colonel.
The hell?
All right, you guys. I'll figure this out. I'll figure.
So I do want to say though, I would have never any interest in seeing an Elvis biopic. But like Baz Luhrmann doing an Elvis biopic, it's at least bound to be a weird and non-traditional musical biography story. I hope even less original than Rocket Man, which for some reason everybody thought was fight against the cliches when it was actually really owning those cliches. Also trying to have it cake and eat it too, to be weird but still follow the same format of every musical biopic. But I like to think that under Baz Luhrmann, it will go for some weird routes, hopefully to make it more interesting.
Potentially.
Because you may not love the director, but he does interesting things at least.
Yeah.
I'm going to go 4 on this because there's only one Elvis movie that you need to see, and it's John Carpenter's movie starring Kurt Russell as Elvis, or 3,000 Miles to Graceland.
Is this movie done? Can Kurt Russell get into this movie?
If Kurt Russell was in the movie, it fucking boost up to me, but he's not. So 4 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm just like a 5, standard biopic. Nothing interesting right now. I won't make you guys tell me what Greyhound says about Tom Hanks's 2020s because I think that's a statement that we will have to make sometime in the 2030s. I think we've come to the end of our episode. I want to thank Mike for coming on.
Yeah,
I'm sorry you got stuck on a movie like Greyhound and talking about potential announced things on IMDb instead of real movies. But
But being on an episode about Greyhound saved you 40 minutes from being on an episode about Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. So you get more time to your life now.
we would absolutely love to have you back
Yeah.
on another day as soon as we get another movie that floats your boat.
Yeah, this is my favorite podcast, guys. I've been listening to you guys. The only one I have not listened to yet is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. But you guys are fucking entertaining, man.
It's a good episode. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for coming on. We'll have you back. Quick announcement for the audience. October is Animated Halloween Movie Month. We will be coming back on, let me check, October 3rd with our first movie of the month, which is Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. It's going to be a fun... we're really switching directions. Tom Hanks to a bunch of animated movies about Halloween. We hope you will enjoy coming along for the ride with us, and we will see you next month. Zach, any final words?
Oh, I didn't know I was going to speak again. I went and brought up the dinosaur. The whole bit of
All right, Zach will not speak anymore. Zach waved the dinosaur. Folks, we'll see you next week.